Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Editorial Edge. I am Bhuvan and I welcome you on this day 18th of August as we will take a look at the three topics that are just listed behind me. First one is obviously an announcement that was made by the Prime Minister on the 15th regarding PM Vishwakarma scheme. So we'll seek to understand what are the basic tenets of the PM Vishwakarma scheme. Thereafter, we will take a look at the Climate Vulnerability Index. Now, this is a report that has been published by a particular body, and that lists essentially Assam as the topmost state, which is at the most risk arising out of climate change amongst all states in India. Okay, so we will take a look at the Climate Vulnerability Index, as well as say what can Assam do, what are firstly the challenges that Assam is faced with, as well as what could it do and what should it be doing to face those challenges, prepare for those challenges. Bear in mind that Assam has two major rivers. Obviously, it has a network of rivers, but from the point of the discussion for the day, we will take a look at number one, Brahmaputra, and number two, Barak. Okay, and we'll consider, say, what are the other environmental factors that make Assam such a risk-prone area. Okay, good morning, welcome. All right, and then the third one is what we'll consider a recent MOU that has been signed between India and Suriname being a country in Southern America. Okay, and that MOU has to do with Indian pharma. So first we'll understand what the MOU is about, and thereafter, very briefly, we'll take a look at the Girmitiyas. Now these Girmitiyas and say the story of Girmitiyas is intrinsically linked with say how India has built its relationship with these states. Okay, so we'll seek to understand that. This will be a session that will not go past more than an hour. So sit back, focus on the topics, and you'll learn a lot arising out of these particular three topics over the course of the say next 45, 50, 60 minutes. All right. Okay, let's get started. And well, if you want to connect with me on Instagram, this is my ID. Okay, you go ahead and scan this. Whereas if you need any particular guidance regarding your examination, you can also mail me on bhuvan.jha@studyiq.com. Whereas the PDF of this particular lecture, you will find this uploaded around noon on this particular Telegram channel. So go ahead, scan it, and become a part of this initiative. Right. Let's get started with the first topic that we have, the PM Vishwakarma scheme. Now, firstly understand that a lot of the trades that are around us, okay, there is no formal training for them, okay. There is in fact a method, a parampara, in fact a tradition of say ustad and someone who learns under the ustad, okay. Shubhankar, good morning, welcome. All right. So now that has been say when you consider say the local mechanic that works around you, okay, or the local carpenter, all of these skill-based trades, there is no formal say knowledge sharing basis that goes from generation to generation, okay, and that has been a gap insofar as say the knowledge sharing plus knowledge augmentation. You know, there are certain skills, there are certain trades that are done a specific way, now have been lost over the passage of time because again they were not probably chronicled or probably not recorded, okay. So this has been a gap that has been identified by the government of India. To after the identification, what they have done is gone ahead and tried to address this problem. And one of the major tenets of how they are seeking to address it is through the PM Vishwakarma scheme. Okay, now the name gives it away, Vishwakarma, which means you are basically looking at those who deal with machines, those who deal with skill-based trades. All of those individuals are covered under the PM Vishwakarma scheme. All right, so let's look at this. Obviously, it has got a monetary component to it that you are looking at, say, support in terms of say extension of a loan, you know. Also you are looking at an arrangement wherein you are going to empower these set of individuals with these particular skill sets that they have, you know, that have been hitherto unchronicled or say not formalized. This is the method the government has started to go ahead and deal with it. All right. Bulbul, good morning, welcome. So let's just look at the key tenets of the PM Vishwakarma scheme, a very brief discussion. You wouldn't find it any difficult, in fact, after you understand that it is essentially to do with that ustad parampara. You know, you learn under an ustad, and that person who learns is sometimes called chotu. You know, that's how the lingo works. But essentially, the whole tenet, the philosophy is of the Guru Shishya parampara. Okay, so you're looking at the Guru Shishya parampara, which is going to be strengthened by this particular scheme, the PM Vishwakarma scheme. All right, you're looking at promoting traditional skills that are practiced by artisans and craftspeople using hands and tools. So essentially it's to do with skill-based trades. Okay. The skill-based trades, the primary trades individuals without which a society will absolutely grind to a halt. Okay, so that's the target audience, that's the target area of this policy. Now, what does it say? It offers various benefits, obviously. First one, what you're looking to do is get them formalized. Let them become a part of the mainstream first. And for that, we are going to identify them, give them some sort of, say, recognition. All right. So the first one is obviously, you're looking at a certificate and an ID card, essentially giving them the recognition that yes, they are covered under the scheme, that they have that particular skill-based trade that they have, say, formal training in or have had some sort of training in. Okay. After you have done this, you're going and giving them credit support. Now, this comes in various tranches. First one, obviously, rupees 1 lakh, then 2 lakhs, and then you are looking at an interest rate which is being provided at 5% is what is proposed. But bear in mind that eventually, this will be given at a much lower rate of interest. Eventually, when say the practical applications or say way down the line, you will see that this 5% will eventually transition into a 0% loan, because you are looking at empowering that set of the population, which are essentially the service providers. They have the particular skill set that most of the other people do not have. And that skill set, those traditions, those arts and craft, they need to be preserved. Which is why a financial impetus is of utmost importance. You will see that the credit-based support system will eventually be strengthened insofar as this policy goes forward in the future. Okay. Bulbul, it is a central sector scheme. Yes. Rajan, good morning. Welcome. Welcome. Okay. So look at the primary objectives of the scheme now. Number one, skill enhancement. Okay. Number two, toolkits. Obviously, you're going to give them the latest tech, the latest tools that have, say, been introduced in that particular skill set that they have. For example, a carpenter might get, say, an electric cutter rather than, say, using the traditional saw. All right. A painter might be given better sort of, say, lead-free paint rather than, say, being given the old lead-heavy paint. All of these will be included as a part of this particular program. All right. You're looking at rewards for digital transactions, which means that the formal, bringing them in the UPI structure, the formal economy, financial part of the economy, that's what also the focus is on, getting them in the financial inclusion insofar as their contribution to the economy is concerned. Okay. And after that, you're looking at giving them marketing assistance. Eventually, the products that they develop, the skills that they have need to be monetized. Yes, the government is spending money, which means the money needs to have some outcome. Now, the outcome in that skill-based trades is only when that skill leads you to make money for yourself, that you become self-sustaining. Okay, that you say do not have to worry about these sort of credit support anymore. You are in a position to be financially independent. Okay, for that, the end-to-end, right from the ideation up until, say, the product launch. Okay, including the marketing is a part of the PM Vishwakarma scheme. Pranjul, good morning. Thanks for joining. All right. Okay. So the scheme's scope, well, these are the people who are looking to be those who will be eligible for this. In fact, you're looking at 18 trades that are a part of this Vishwakarma scheme. Okay, a set of 18 trades have been listed down. We will be sharing that. I will be sharing that in my Telegram group. You can have a look at it. But from the macro perspective, you have to realize the point of the policy. The point of the policy is essentially to give support to that segment of the population that are extremely skilled, not a part of the formal economy, not a part of the formal training process, bringing them in that fold. Okay, giving them the credit support, plus the marketing, preserving that knowledge that they have. All of that are tangible outcomes that will come out of the PM Vishwakarma scheme. All right. Do you have any doubts? You just let me know in the chat very quickly. Mansu, good morning. Hi, I'm very good. Thanks for joining, guys. All right. So you're looking at, say, carpenters, right? Boat makers, blacksmiths. Now, you must have read recently that a particular form of, say, boat making, shipbuilding has now been reintroduced, no less than by the Indian Navy. Okay, which means you're looking at harnessing, say, ancient skills also. How is that going to be formalized? You need those people who are going to be trained, who are actually trained in those skill sets. You need to formalize them. You need to give them the recognition that they deserve. Can someone let me know what is that ancient skill shipbuilding method that the Indian Navy has signed MOU with the government of India? What is that ancient shipbuilding method, guys? Someone let me know very quickly. Okay, you're looking at goldsmiths, potters. See, now for potters and for goldsmiths, imagine the old way of, say, pottery. Now go ahead and say if you give them an electric machine, go ahead and say mold their pottery items on an electrical machine. Less, say, difficult, It's going to be much more easier for you. The efficiency of the process will increase. All of that are a part of the PM Vishwakarma scheme. Okay? And that ancient method that I was referring to is the Tankai method. I think we had discussed that in this very series, the editorial edge. Right? Okay, so this was the PM Vishwakarma scheme announced on the 15th of August, just a couple of days ago, by the Prime Minister from the ramparts of the Red Fort. All right? Okay, we'll go to the next one. So now let's very quickly discuss Assam's climate vulnerability. Okay, just bear with me for a couple of minutes. And my hunch is that, well, given that it has been discussed no less by the Climate Vulnerability Index, we'll discuss which particular organization publishes the Climate Vulnerability Index. But we'll also seek to understand from the mains perspective, which is again coming in a couple of weeks' time. In fact, it's not long to go now, right? So from the mains perspective, again, if you notice, right from the, say, monsoons hit, okay, one area that almost the whole of country knows is going to get flooded is the northeast, more specifically Assam. Okay, it's a known phenomenon every year. It happens every year, and a lot of life property is lost. Okay, in spite of the best preparations of Assam, and Assam does go ahead and do a lot of pre-preparation. It does prepare for the catastrophe that it is confronted with, say, every year. In spite of that, why is it that Assam is ranked number 1 in the Climate Vulnerability Index? Okay, so let's very quickly look at this. The Assam's climate vulnerability. All right, this is the topic. It will be a brief discussion. We'll seek to take a look at the facts of the case and then just go from there. All right. So, like I told you, firstly, the first learning for you, the Climate Vulnerability Index, okay, which is published by a body called the CEEW. Okay, Council of Energy, Environment and Water. Now, this is again an NGO, a not-for-profit, a private organization, in fact, not a part of the government of India. However, the CEEW, the Council of Energy, Environment and Water, they came up with the Climate Vulnerability Index. What is it all about? In fact, they have gone ahead and mapped India district-wise. Okay, they have gone and mapped India district-wise, giving out the zonation of, say, particular threats, particular vulnerabilities that each district has. Okay, and in that report, it is stated that the most vulnerable state, okay, the most vulnerable state is in fact Assam. All right. Now, what does it say in terms of the report? The key findings for you in terms of, say, the examination perspective. What does the report say? The report says that Assam is a threat mainly because of the network of the rivers and primarily because of 2 rivers. Number 1 is Brahmaputra and number 2 is Barak. All right. And because of the massive network of rivers it has, the massive amount of rainfall as it gets, okay, obviously the rainfall is erratic, it's not always continuous, sometimes it comes in huge spells, okay. So which means that because of erratic rainfall, which is again, say, being magnified by climate change, Assam is confronted with 3 problems, okay, 3 particular problems. Number 1, flooding. Number 2, landslides. And number 3, soil erosion. Now, bear in mind, I am taking the example of Assam, but this theory will land for and will hold true for any place that is climate vulnerable and has, say, a major network of rivers. Okay, so the entirety of Northeast can in fact be, say, explained if you look at the problems that Assam is faced with. All right. Do I have any questions? Bulbul, so the whole state of Assam is what we are discussing. Okay, Tankai method, correct. Some of you might have got the spelling incorrect, but okay, I appreciate the answer. Well done. Okay. So these are the 3 problems that it's faced with. Number 1, flood. Number 2, landslides. And number 3, soil erosion. Okay. Now let's look at the facts of the matter. Okay. Number 1, the Climate Vulnerability Index published by the CEEW, bear in mind. Okay. From the pre-perspective, this is one particular fact that you ought to know, because the examination does have a deep love for these sorts of index and reports. I suggest you make a note of it. Okay. So it ranks Assam as India's most climate vulnerable state. Now, what does the report say? The several factors that the report attributes it to. Number one, the presence of the expansive Brahmaputra and Barak river system. Okay, the Brahmaputra and Barak river basin. Then you're looking at obviously deforestation that's happening. And then the geo-ecological fragility of the northeast. Given that it's again a very pristine area, it's a fragile area, the action of all of these three together gives Assam three major headaches. Number one is catastrophic floods. Number two, landslides. And number three, soil erosion. Okay, is this clear so far, guys? Yes? Now, what are the solutions? Okay, from the mains perspective, let's go ahead and look at the solutions for this now. Okay, so how are you going ahead? Going ahead and say, looking at we have addressed the problem statement. Now, what are the solutions? Number one, what you're going to look and do is decentralizing the risk mapping exercise. Okay, don't worry about writing this. I'm going to share this in my Telegram channel. You can have a look. The handwritten notes of this will also be available there. Okay, the handwritten means the ones that I'm writing in the slide. It will be exactly available there. Now, what do I mean by decentralizing the risk mapping exercise? The names it gives it away, guys. Okay, most of the mains answers should include terms like these. Okay, and what does it exactly mean? I'm looking at decentralizing risk mapping. You are going to first map the risk of each district. Okay, figure out which district is at most threat. Say Karimganj or say Silchar, Tezpur or Guwahati. Okay, and what are the factors you are going to consider? The rainfall, the river course, the green cover that you have, the level of soil erosion that a particular district has seen. After it has been done at the district level, what does decentralizing mean? That you go downer in the hierarchy, you go below. After the district, you are looking at going ahead and making the zone-wise district mapping exercise. Say for example, the panchayat level. You go ahead and carry out the same exercise, figuring out which of the panchayats are at the most threats. Because unless you have done this, you do not know where should you address the most of your resources at. Okay, which means you are looking at district plus panchayat level exercise. Okay, unless you have done this donation right at the say LSG level, the local self-governance level, well, you are not going to be adequately prepared for the climate change threat that you are faced with. Is it clear, guys? Yes, let me know. Straight away, number two, you have to involve community. Okay, eventually, when you are dealing with climate change, unless you are say involving community in the process, it's not going to be a complete process. Okay, so community participation is important. How do you go ahead and ensure community participation? Which means, firstly, when you look at say the problems that it is faced with, say soil erosion. Okay, now you know that Brahmaputra and Barak regularly eat into their embankments because of the say large volume of water that they carry, and again varying rates throughout the year. They eat into the embankments, don't they? Which means your villagers are your first line of defense. You go ahead and educate them that, well, you don't put your say livelihood dependent on the banks of the river, right? You go ahead and educate them about building embankments, about the best practices to be followed in such an environment. Okay, unless and until you're including the community in the process, well, you're not going to be dealing with it on a real-time basis. Correct, guys? I agree with you, Shubhankar. It's a bottom-top approach. Absolutely. Up until now, what has happened? Most of the focus, whenever you look at it, you know, we discuss about, say, the Paris Climate Agreement or this agreement or that agreement, the Rio 92 summit, COP28 coming up. All of these are what? Say, the overarching philosophy that they will provide us with. Eventually, the implementation is with the people. And the government can only be playing the role of an enabler there at best, because the people need to be empowered to face with climate change head on. Don't you agree with me there, guys? Let me know if you disagree with me, and we'll probably figure out each other's POV. Okay. Next one, what you're looking at is obviously going ahead and understanding. Okay. Understanding the link first. Okay. Understanding the link between climate change and disasters in Assam. Now, how are you going to understand this better? Which means you need more research, more development. Okay. You need to have institutional support, say support of academic institutions. Okay. More research ought to be done to make sure that Assam is provided with all the basic, say, information that it needs, and in fact advanced information that it needs to better prepare itself. Correct? Right now, see, the information, the science may be sporadic, may not be adequate, which is why the policy making is not going to justify itself on the ground. Correct? When it comes to this risk mapping exercise, guys, okay, one MCQ that you should be aware of is, say, in terms of UPSC. Okay, this same exercise, the risk mapping exercise, up until now, Assam becomes the third state in India to do it. Okay, the two other states that have done it so far, one is Kerala. Okay, down south, Kerala has done this, the same decentralized risk mapping exercise up until, say, panchayat level. And the second one, I believe, is Uttar Pradesh. Okay, so Assam now becomes the third state in the country to go ahead and have carried this exercise out. Okay, so just make a note of this from the examination perspective. It's a useful information to know. Okay, that Assam is the third state. Earlier, it has been done in 2 states. Why can't I see your chats? Guys, am I live? Can you see me? I'm not sure. I can't see your chats. Okay. Nevertheless, just write yes in the chat if you can see me. Okay. Let's go forward. Number 4. I hope I'm live. Next, what you're looking at, say, is after the link has been done. Okay. The financial impetus. Okay. Eventually, for involving the community, say in this particular process, okay, you are going to need finance. Yes. For, say, climate action and disaster management, you are going to need finance, the money. Where is the money going to come from? Now, the state has say, a disaster action plan. A disaster management process is there. Okay. And in Assam's case, it does include a blueprint. That it does have, say, a basic idea of where the money is going to come from. But then it is not systematically, say, empowered. You know. So the money for that, who gives it? You know, the center, the state, or say you are going to get money from abroad. Some multilateral developmental institution is going to go ahead and fund the whole project. Or is it going to be a bilateral loan? What's the mechanism of funding insofar as Assam's security is to be guaranteed? Okay. Thanks for letting me know, guys. Oh, finally, it moved. Okay. So the financial impetus, which means the mechanism of funding. Okay. The mechanism of funding ought to be understood. All right. And finally, number 5, the 5th further point insofar as securing Assam's future for the coming days is concerned, is you have identified all the stakeholders, guys. You have identified the first stakeholder, the government. The second stakeholder, that's the person, the population. Obviously, you can't leave the private sector behind. Okay, so the private sector participation ought to be much more visible. Now, one way to do this is go ahead and say encourage CSR in, say, climate adaptation in Assam. Obviously, you can't enforce this because CSR is the prerogative of the particular company or the organization, but you can go ahead and say encourage companies to invest more in terms of preparing the people of Assam, the infrastructure of Assam, to better prepare itself for the ensuing problems that it is faced with every year. Clear? So these would be a further points in terms of, say, if you are faced with a question, this means regarding, say, Assam's climate vulnerability. Because again, this does become a question of importance given that this is a problem Assam is confronted with every year. Various newspaper articles are published on it. In fact, an industrial level of articles are published on this. So as a UPSC aspirant, it would serve you well to go ahead and say, consider these factors. Obviously, you can include a couple of more, you know. Yes, do we have suggestions here? Correct. Good, Shubhankar. That's a good suggestion that you go ahead and link it with the Coalition of Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Yes, that's also true. So obviously, you can build on this. These are the basic framework that I've provided you. Go ahead and introduce 2 more points and say, make a basic idea of how you will frame your answer. Okay. That first, you will go ahead and say, list out the problems Assam is faced with. Thereafter, you will go ahead and list the solutions and say the way forward. All right. Okay. So that's Assam's climate risk. Bear in mind the question for this. Now, I have given you this whole explanation with the whole purpose that you will go ahead and write me an answer for this. The question for this, I'll be sharing it in my Telegram channel. Okay. So once again, if you'd like to go ahead and write an answer for this and send me and say, ask me to go ahead and evaluate, go ahead and send it on my Telegram channel. Okay. This is in fact the whole place where you go ahead and sign up for it. Okay, I've given you the basic raw material. Now it shouldn't be a problem for you to go ahead and answer the questions. Clear? Okay, next and the final topic for the day, which will in fact take up around 15 to 20 minutes of our time. So just bear with me. Now India and Suriname have gone ahead and signed an MOU on a particular pharma project. In fact, a pharma related MOU, a memorandum of understanding, has been signed between India and Suriname. Now bear in mind, Suriname is a country in Southern America. Just last week, in fact, on this very program, on this very morning edition of news that I bring for you, we had discussed how Suriname is a part of the ACTO, okay, which is in fact to do with conservation in the Amazon. Yes, we had discussed how at the Amazon summit that just got over, I think it was last week, okay, that all these countries, the 8 Amazon river basin countries, they did not find agreement on, say, going ahead and say conserving Amazon. So Suriname has been in the news for, say, all the right reasons, wrong reasons, whatever, but it has been in the news. So I suggest that given that India has also engaged extensively with Suriname in the recent past, okay, it is of importance for us to consider this particular country. Now, what is the MOU signed about? The MOU says that you are going to accept Indian Pharmacopoeia as a book of standards of medicines in Suriname. Now, what is this IP? Okay, understand it this way. It's the standard, the book of standards for Indian pharma product. Okay, for example, you need to have standards when it comes to, say, these kind of goods, which have, say, direct implications on people's lives. Okay, which is why you see that, say, a pressure cooker is standardized by, say, an ISO certified. Correct, Pranjul. Belem declaration is correct insofar as the Amazon discussion is concerned. You are absolutely correct. Okay. Do you see? Standards are important. Pranjul, I am impressed. In fact, that's correct. We'll discuss what the award is at the end of this particular discussion. Well done. Okay. But you understand the conversation around standards, guys? That why standards are important when it comes to, say, goods that we humans deal with. So more so important, why it is important for pharma products. So the book of Indian standards, because again India is a major pharma producer of the world. So that is done according to the Indian Pharmacopoeia, IP, which is a book of standards for medicine. Now that book, that particular standards, those guidelines, all of that will be now accepted in Suriname. Why again? Because again India is sending a lot of, say, exports, medicinal exports throughout the world. Okay, Suriname also is a beneficiary, a recipient of those pharma exports. Now Suriname accepting the Indian Pharmacopoeia, the IP, what are the benefits for us now? Straight away, you have gone ahead and normalized that sector. You're looking at boosting your exports. The whole industry gets a thrust insofar as engaging with Suriname is concerned. Okay, so let's look at the benefits. What is Suriname going to do now? They will accept the certificate of analysis issued by the Indian manufacturers as per the Indian Pharmacopoeia, and then do away with the requirement of duplicate testing. So ideally what would be done earlier is, say, if you were an Indian pharma exporter, so you go ahead and send, say, medicine A to Suriname. Okay. Now the authorities in Suriname would go ahead and test the medicine again. Okay. They will do their due diligence insofar as the veracity, the organic composition, the effectiveness, the potency, the side effects of that particular medicine is concerned. Now this would be a time consuming process. Okay. This would, say, hold up exports if you wanted to go ahead and straight away go ahead and, say, make a presence for yourself in the Suriname market, the Suriname's pharma market. Now that is done away with. No more duplicate testing. Okay. The testing that is done in India according to the Indian Pharmacopoeia IP standards, well, that will be straight away accepted. A certificate will be issued. You show it in Suriname and you can go ahead and straight away take your products in. Understanding it? Okay. You are getting standards from the IPC at a reasonably low cost that can be used during the quality control, obviously, because again, you're looking at this duplication going down, the cost coming down. Okay. You're also looking at the standards. You know, the impurity standards often have to be determined. Now that is coming at a low cost for you. Okay. And you have better scope for development of generic medicines and contributing to availability of affordable medicines in Suriname. In fact, a lot of goodwill can be generated by this. Okay. If you go ahead and, say, engage in this sector, the pharma sector, in an ethical manner. Of late, India has been at the wrong end of that goodwill. Our medicinal products probably haven't done well in, say, various continents. In Africa itself, there were several instances where several countries reported that the medicinal products, the pharma products of the Indian market, they led to some fatalities. So now there is a renewed thrust again from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare to make sure that this whole sector is absolutely regulated. Why again? Because India is coming up as a major pharma player in the whole world. Correct? Okay. So this is Suriname. Now this was the whole IP standards of pharma that I told you about. Now this is published by the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission. Okay. The IP standards that I told you about. Okay. The standards for pharma products, the Indian Pharmacopoeia, medicinal or pharma products. So this is published by this particular commission, which is again under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So straight away you can join the dots that this is being done to better regulate this industry. Clear? Now, IPC, this particular commission created to set standards of drugs in the country. Okay? And its basic function is to update regularly the standards of treatment for diseases in the region. It will set the best standards, that this is the basic bare minimum that you need to qualify with for you to have your product in the market. Correct? Absolutely, Shubhankar, I agree. In Gambia, Uzbekistan, in fact in America also, you did have this issue where Indian pharma products led to some fatalities, which was again a source of problem. Again, it's not expected. Someone takes a medicine in good faith. You can't go ahead and break that faith. Okay. So it also publishes a book, by the way. This is the book that I'm talking about, the Indian Pharmacopoeia, published by the Commission on behalf of the Ministry, and it goes ahead and lays down all the rules and the standards that are in place. Okay. So your learnings from this: IP, Indian Pharmacopoeia, the standards, and IPC, the Commission, which is under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and which publishes this particular standard. Right? Again, from the pre perspective, I suggest make a note of this, because again, pharma has been in the news, guys. You cannot afford to miss out this sector, especially when you're preparing for next year. Okay. For the right reasons, for the wrong reasons, for the government's impetus now to better control this and regulate this sector, I suggest that pharma industry be a major point of discussion for any aspirant. Okay. All right. Now let's go forward and look at the history. And insofar as India-Suriname is concerned, okay. Insofar as the Indian-Suriname relationship is concerned, let's look at the IR perspective a bit. One problem, and in fact one area of convergence, has been the Girmitias. Okay. Again, from the pre-perspective, I suggest making a note of this. So we'll discuss very quickly what are the Girmitias, the indentured laborers as they were known as. Okay. The indentured laborers. So we'll quickly understand what the whole conversation around indentured laborers is. How did, say, the abolition of slavery lead to the creation of this particular segment of people who were called the indentured laborers? Okay, very important from the exam perspective. I suggest listen to it. There's not a lot of, say, history, but yes, there's a bit of understanding that you ought to have. Okay, so we have 15 minutes. Give me 15 minutes and it will be done. Okay, look at this. Firstly, what happened? Initially, let's start from the very beginning. So in 1834, you had the British Empire that went and said that, okay, no more slavery. Okay, that straight away the British Empire abolished slavery. Now, while this was a welcome step, a much needed step, this obviously had, say, repercussions in how, say, the market functioned after that. Because once again, the slaves of earlier times, they did drive a market, didn't they? With their hard work, with their exploitation, there existed a market that was driven. Now, the abolition of slavery straight away hit this market. So, those people who operated the market, what did they come up with? They came up with a substitute system. Okay. So, you straight away understand that the slaves had gone ahead and built the whole empire. In fact, on their backs it was built, and now a system of indentured servitude was introduced. Obviously, you can't go ahead and say have slaves. What you're going to do is essentially have contract slaves now. That was essentially indentured laborers. Okay. So, in which the laborer would sign a contract for a fixed period and get absolutely peanuts as wages. Now, what would happen? Say the people, the traders from the West would come. They would go to the poor countries, pick up dirt cheap labor that would be available at a very cheap price, ship them off to those particular countries, back home, yes, and then there they would be made to work, say, and their human rights be completely violated on, absolute lack of privacy, whipped, violence, all of that being done, and at the end of the day, for your hard work, you get almost nothing. Okay, it's yes, you do get a fair sum of money, some amount of money, but that's not reflective of the hard work that you've put in. Plus, there is a breach of faith also. We'll discuss the breach of faith. Okay, so straight away, soon the businesses of indentured labor supply flourished, and the main victims were the Indians and the Chinese. Okay, cheap labor. So where would you find cheap labor that time? Straight away, Indochina. That was the target area for these merchants, okay, these traders. So now, going forward, let's look at this. The Permanent Settlement Act. Any student of UPSC will have information about this. Yes, Lord Cornwallis establishing it in the provinces of Bengal, Odisha and Bihar, right, 1793. The ramifications of this, guys, that because you had suddenly a class come up, zamindars, that owned everything and everyone on the land, right? Now this led to what? Essential exploitation of the people who worked on the land. Now what option did the person have? Either you submit to this or you go ahead and say go to a foreign land. That was the problem. That dreams were sold to individuals who were exploited at home, and to escape this exploitation they went abroad, and there also they were exploited. Okay, so zamindars taxed the peasants, and thus the people of these impoverished villages, yes, because of Cornwallis, well, they were soft targets. Now they had some individuals called Arkatis. Okay, remember this name, guys, the Arkatis. They were the ones, the middlemen of sorts, in fact. Okay, they were the agents, the middlemen, who essentially became the conduit. They did the misrepresentation, the selling of dreams to poor people of India. And then they were told that, well, if you go Saat Samandar Par, if you go to this particular country, you know what, you get this amount of money. In 3 years, you will have your own house. All of that was told by the Arkatis to the poor people of that time. Alright, so the Arkatis targeted young men, women, all of them. In fact, what is seen is often that the indentured laborers, the girmitias, as we know them now, they were, again, it was not like a particular segment of the population was targeted. Almost it was, the dreams were missold to almost every part of the population, be it the so-called the forward caste, the backward caste, men, women, region-wise, didn't matter. It was eventually your potential as a resource that was exploited by the Arkatis. Okay, so false promises were sold, and once these people were swayed or harassed, they were told to sign an agreement. Now, agreement is an English word. India did not have high levels of literacy that time. In fact, poverty was the order of the day, which is why the native Indian, the person, the common Indian found it very difficult to say the word agreement, which is why they in fact would say Girmit, and thus the name came Girmitias. Because they couldn't say the word agreement, they would say Girmit. So eventually, the set of people who signed the Girmit were known as the Girmitias. Clear? Now these Girmitias were shipped off to Mauritius, British Guyana, South Africa, Trinidad, Fiji, Jamaica, Suriname, Reunion Islands, throughout the world. In fact, the sugarcane producing countries were the ones that most benefited out of this whole agreement, Girmit. Okay, and what you find is that some went to Africa also and worked on the Kenya-Uganda railroad project. Some sent to the West Indies, the Caribbean islands, worked on the sugarcane plantations. And in that group was this group of the first Indians who landed in Suriname. Alright, so go ahead and look at this. This is in fact the first group of Girmitias that had left. Among the first group of Girmitias that left the shores of India. Okay, so here you see poor people from all parts of the country, lack of literacy, lack of opportunity, oppressed at home due to the zamindari system, and now oppressed abroad also. Okay, let's go forward. So straight away the horror story for these Girmitias began right from the time they boarded the ship to go to the particular country, सात समंदर पार जाने के लिए. Okay, so they were in fact filled beyond capacity. You can expect, you are going to be an indentured laborer. They are not going to take you in first class cabin. Okay, they were packed under the seaboard. Yes, under the decks of the ship. Yes, most of them died on the way. Those who survived probably had extreme trauma. And once they landed there, there was no help, no healthcare, nothing at all, no support from the system. And straight away they were asked to sign a contract. Imagine the position, your backs are against the wall, and still you find, and that's something that you should appreciate as a civil service aspirant, that still, in spite of the fact that a group of Indians sent abroad, wronged from the start up until they landed there, and even then you find that, say, Indians now in those countries have become valuable members of the society, contributing to the growth of the nations that they're a part of, right? So that tells you what? About the nature of, say, the Indian ethos, that it will find its way even in the most hostile of circumstances and contribute in a positive manner, right? So you're looking at the problems that were assigned right from the very beginning, and once you landed, you were assigned to an estate for 5 years, okay? So straight away, you were whipped, women were sexually abused, you had to carry an identity card without which you cannot move around the town. If you were found without your identity card, it was essentially understood that you're trying to escape your particular estate that you have been assigned to, where you will be providing your services at a pittance, at a nominal fee, in fact. Okay. So look at these facts of the case now. Slightest breach of contract was treated as a criminal case. Okay. You could be imprisoned for leaving the estate. You had to carry an ID card, a certificate. And even then, at that system, there was a system of grievance redressal that existed in those states. Okay. A system of grievance redressal did exist. You did have a protector of immigrants, a commissioner of sorts who would look after the interests of the immigrants. However, please understand that it's a lot to do with the market. Okay, that indentured laborers essentially were feeding a market, and so the market straight away went and had the protector of immigrants in their hands. The immigrants had no way out. They could not expect justice. Why? Once again, because the market forces wouldn't allow them to say seek justice. All right, absolutely, Subhankar. Oh, that's a good quote. I know. Well done. That's a good quote. Okay. So now, what do you see? How did the Girmitiyas fight back? Okay. Straight away, what you see is the moderate philosophy in terms of, say, the Indian freedom struggle. That you rely on petitions. You rely on swaying the mind of the person who is, the colonizer, in fact. That was the first strategy that they thought of. So you look at petitions, okay. Thereafter, when the petitions failed, you look at sabotage operations, and finally the extremists came in, and you look at a little bit of violence also that followed. Okay. So both you find that moderate ways and extremist ways, both were pursued. Okay. There was in fact a bail fund. So what happened was that if, say, suppose there were 8 Indians that were together, okay, they formed small coteries, small groups, and so if one was imprisoned, the rest would pool in money together and pull him out of jail. All right. So if he went in, the rest would pool in money together from the community, from say the native Indian population there, and bail the other person out. Okay. So a lot of solidarity was there straight away from the very beginning, because again, you are having to face a common problem. Okay. The oppressor. Right. So the workers banded together. In fact, the primary takeaway of all of this is that, in spite of the different religions that each of these laborers belong to, bear in mind, like I told you, when they were signed, it was not like a particular community or a particular caste was targeted. Regardless of your religious affiliations, the Arkatis looked at you as a resource. Okay. So once these individuals were in a problem, they also forgot their religious differences. That did not matter. The identity that they had together was a common identity, and that was of the Girmitiyas. Okay. So the Hindus would build mosques, Muslims would build temples. They held on to their faiths. Okay. In spite of the fact that they were different faiths, the common identity was Girmitiyas, and yet what you found was that there was the immense deep devotion to one's faith also. That was the central foundation on which this whole resistance was built. All right. Let's go forward and have a look at it. The story from settling to adapting and now to thriving. Right. So Once you finished your tenure, your contract of say 5 years, okay, after your contract of 5 years was done, the whole focus was on saving money. After you had saved money, you go and get yourself land. Go ahead and start in cattle rearing. This was the method in which the story of Girmitias begins. See how the civilization of mankind as we know it, starting from the very beginning, that you go ahead and domesticate animals and build from there. It's exact template that the Girmitias followed. So after you finished your contract, the whole focus was on first getting financial independence, okay, finding a source of living for yourself, sustenance, and thereafter, like we know it today, the whole focus was on getting education. Because that was obviously known to the Indians from the very beginning, that education is the only way out of misery and poverty. Okay, so it's not a very recent phenomenon when we discuss it today. This is an example, followed by the Girmitias almost close to 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years ago now, right? So, strikes were observed, all of this did in, and eventually what you had was a law that came in South Africa first, the Immigration Law Amendment Bill, Natal and Transvaal, right? That stated that Indian labourers could not be free after their tenure. They had to either return to India or re-indenture themselves. Okay. Now this clause that the Indians were benefiting out of was taken away. Bear in mind, returning to India was not an option. Costly process. Okay. You do not have that much money that you can with your family go back to India now. Plus, you know the situation back in India. You have escaped from there. Okay. And at the same time, re-indenturing means harsher terms of punishment, okay, harsher contracts. So that way out that the Girmitias have was blocked. Next, let's go forward. And so finally you had the Franchise Amendment Bill, okay, which limited the number of Indians who could vote to 300, again in South Africa. The Black Act and the contributions of Mahatma Gandhi that followed after this. This is in fact the story of Girmitias that the father of the nation also had an encounter with. Okay, the very people who say previous generations had gone to say South Africa for search of better opportunities, they were in fact the catalyst for Gandhi to become what he became later. Okay, so another point that you could possibly include in your answers also, right? All right, have a look at this, but I want to show you this particular statue. Okay, now this statue is in Suriname. All right, so when you're talking about the India-Suriname relations, it is imperative that aside from say all the other pharmaceutical, the award being exchanged, all of that, you also mention the historical concept of the relationship between the two countries. And if you can mention that the statue of Lalla Rukh, if you mention this, Lalla Rukh and Baba Mai, yes, well, it's going to be a good addition to your answer. So this is in fact the statue of Baba Mai, right, who are say considered to be the symbols of the first Indians that landed in Suriname, and the place where they landed, that port where the ship docked, is known as Lalla Rukh. Okay, so if you mention these two terms, obviously it will add to your answer. Okay, all right, and this is the particular award that a student of mine was Shubhankar in fact was mentioning about, that the President of India, Srimati Draupadi Murmu, she was given Suriname's highest distinction, yes, the Grand Order of the Chain of the Yellow Star. Yes. So obviously a lot of people-to-people relationship has existed right from the very beginning. Now you are seeing government-to-government relationship that is also growing of late. Okay. And what you are also seeing is now with the say pharma industries regulation coming in, a lot of business-to-business convergence. Okay. So in the last 15 minutes, we quickly took a look at the people-to-people relationship insofar as the Girmitias is concerned. We took a look at the government-to-government relationship and the business-to-business relationship. All of the three will form an inherent part of your answer if you are faced with in the mains. Okay. Insofar as the prelims point of view is concerned, again the Amazon Summit, the Belém Declaration, the ACTO, Suriname and its geography around, I suggest you take a brief look at, and your topic should be covered for both examinations, pre and mains. All right. So with that, we come to the end of this session every morning that I bring for you, where we discuss 3 to 4 topics of importance, topics that you ought to be aware of, and say tangents to the topic without which you would not be say well prepared for the examination. Okay. If you have any questions for me, you can send it to me on my email ID. All right. Or you can find the whole PDF for this on my Telegram channel. I'll upload it around noon. All right. And if you have any particular suggestions for me, any particular grievance, feedback, well, use the comment box, or you can reach out to me on my email ID. All right. So, okay, Shubhankar, Pranjal, thanks then. Pranjal, thank you for that. That was a good observation. I was actually impressed. All right. Okay. That completes the class for today. All right. Please leave me a like if you enjoyed the session, if you learned something more importantly out of it, because that's my focus every morning, that we should have tangible learning outcomes for each student who watches this and invests his or her time watching this session. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Till I see you tomorrow morning, 6:30 a.m. with another edition of the Editorial Edge. It's a wrap. Bye.